Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. Apologies for not playing the music. You got to see my very confused face and then a momentary, oh no. I'm sure you won't be surprised when you find out that I've got like a mind full of things and just wasn't fully focused in the moment. But anyway, that's also what happens when you go live, right? We're real people and we do human things. But anyway, welcome to the Vegan Stew. Thanks so much for being here with us tonight. First, I'd like to thank VegKey, our sponsor for this month's talks. And as always, prize packs from our gracious donators, sponsors, have been donated by Hodo Foods, Follow Your Heart, Cinnaholic, Revolution Gelato, Terra Seed, Fabulous, Rebel Cheese, and VegKey. So you head on over to virtualvegfest.com, enter your info under the contest tab, and then you'll be entered into the wish pond, and hopefully you'll win one of these amazing prize packs. So head on over and do that after the show. We have something super important we'll talk about. So let's bring everybody in. So first we've got Helene from Triangle Veg Fest Expos, and Marla Rose from Vegan Street.
Hello.
And Kelly Kerr from Climate Healers. So there's a lot happening in the world, right? Our initial plan for this episode was to talk about women's rights and how they're being taken away, and and then we were going to talk about kind of how that happens in the dairy industry and make that connection and help people kind of see what's happening. And then there was a mass shooting in Buffalo, and then there was a mass shooting yesterday at an elementary school. So we're here to hold space for you, to talk about what's happening, how you're feeling, how I'm feeling. Hi, Diane. Thanks for joining us. Well, I'm already getting choked up. Where do we start? What do you think?
It's not easy. I have COVID. So it's my turn. If you're not friends with me on Facebook, then you don't know, but I do. I tested positive on, I don't know what today, Wednesday. I tested positive yesterday. And hi, Susan. And I'm very congested and I have, some stuff going on, but this was a show that I didn't want to miss. I wasn't going to open it. So thank you, Kimberly, for that really good opening, even with the extra face. It's so cool. So Patricia's actually really good. It's just getting really, my heart just breaks. I don't even know what to say. Well, we kind of debated coming on at all, with everything that's going on. And I personally pushed the issue of, we're a talk show, we should talk even through the most difficult times, because we can't guarantee that next week something else might not happen.
Right.
So do we just delay until the world is rainbows and roses? It'll just never happen at this point. But we had a great topic. We'll move it to next week. And what I want to know is, it was funny. I was thinking about this today of like how to open the show. And Marla Rose sent me a message to say, like, send a message to all of us and said, well, what do you want to do? Like, what are we going to do about this? And I was like, I was just thinking about this, about, thoughts and feelings on what's transpired, and trying to figure out, what to do, what we feel about it, and sharing that with everyone, because we need to speak about it, because our ideas may help you and your ideas may help us. But it's important to recognize there was a school shooting in Texas yesterday. There was a grocery store shooting in Buffalo, New York. There was a shooting in California. There was also another shooting in Texas that isn't even spoken. There's not even spoken about. And personally, my cousins were in Parkland in Florida in the school shooting. So my family has been directly impacted by this, and it's 4 years later, and they still don't know how to deal with this. And every time something like this happens, all those people that have been impacted get triggered.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say something really controversial, and then I'm going to try and help get Nast in here. So, are they going to do anything? Because these are Black and brown people,
Mm-hmm.
and Asians.
Mm-hmm.
Does a school that's private, that's Christian based, with all wealthy families and kids, by politicians, need to get gunned down and their kids killed for them to actually do something about guns? I'm going to go help Mouse now. Go ahead, Marla.
Well, I'd say no, because we saw Sandy Hook. That was a very affluent community of elementary school children. I believe 20 children, 21 children killed, several adults. So I think, to answer your question, the whole picture of it is so disconcerting and so awful, but I don't think that is the bottom, because obviously guns are more important than people. Guns are more important than our children having a decent future. Guns are more important than innocent people being able to grocery shop or being able to go about their day without fear of being murdered. So I would say it wouldn't matter, because we saw the ugly underbelly of reality with Sandy Hook, and when push came to shove, we did nothing. Our politicians changed no policies. People keep voting in those who will not enact universal background checks or the most bare minimum of gun control legislation. So I would say, in a long-winded way, that we have our answer. It does not matter.
Well, there's a piece missing, though. They may have been affluent, but were they Christian? Were they politicians? I feel like this has to hit home, because they're not. Because in Parkland, it's a high Jewish community and wealthy, and they have those kids, which they're young adults, have created a movement out of their experience, which is absolutely incredible. And that movement is to get guns off the street, to get their politicians to make a difference. And they don't care. The politicians don't care. Mm-hmm. They care about the money they get from their lobbyists, or they get their bribes that they get, and they do what those bribes say they need to do. And one of those is to not get rid of guns. And that's both sides. So if you're thinking like we're like this liberal group and Democratic voting, probably yes. But that doesn't mean that I'm saying like Democrats are any better. They're corporate Democrats, and they're fucking things up just as much as the Republicans are. They're just horrible at it, because they don't even they're not even good at debating or doing anything. The Republicans are fantastic at their role.
Yeah, I would agree with that part. Yeah. I would agree that they're very good at
people have died, right? And did you post this already? Because I didn't see it. It's all about power. Nothing will be done. Mm-hmm. And I mean, but the power should be with us, not with the 400 of them.
Right. Well, I want to say a couple little things. One is, these are like, 50 senators in the Senate who will not pass universal background checks. But they are responding to their base. This isn't, honestly, when you look at the money that comes in from the NRA, it is quite a lot, but it's not astronomical. What they are afraid of is pissing off their base of gun owners. And that's a huge part of this picture, which is that there are more guns in the United States than there are people. There are about 400 million guns in the United States, about 330 million people. The average gun owner owns 5 guns in the United States. The amount of guns sold in the United States has tripled since 2000. 40 million guns were sold in 2020 alone, according to the FBI. So my point is, they are listening to their base and their constituents who love their guns. And there is an American obsession that I do not understand for the life of me, because I don't share it, with guns and gun ownership. So anyway, I just want to put that out there.
You know, in 2020, we bought guns.
Mhm.
We did it because
Mhm.
we felt we needed protection.
Mhm.
We felt we needed to be on the side that needed to be able to fight the other side that has all the guns.
Right.
So I highly recommend that everyone who's liberal or independent, whatever you are, actually to go get a gun, because when it comes to that battle, that civil war,
Mhm.
we needed equal, fair playing ground. Good, Kimberly.
I need to understand the types of guns that people are allowed to buy. So this kid from yesterday, he, for his 18th birthday, bought himself 2 assault rifles.
Right.
In what world does anyone need an assault rifle, let alone some 18-year-old kid? And, you know, they said he had no criminal history. He had no even history of, you know, mental health issues. So why would they question it? My question is, why the fuck are these guns being sold at all?
Right. Well, and I'm sorry, 98% of guns sold are sold, more than 98% are sold to civilians. So, and yeah, I mean, and nobody wants to do a thing about it. So,
I saw a statistic that said that, so to define a mass shooting, first of all, just to be clear on that, is when 4 or more people, not including the shooter,
right.
have been killed. There have been 213 mass shootings in the US this year. Today is day 145 of
Right.
2022.
More mass shooting than days.
Yeah.
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 Far more. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And somehow the ability to have these guns outweighs all of these people who have been murdered.
I don't want to take a big pivot here, but I do think that some of the mentality around this rugged individualism that we idealize and just worship in this country. Heighten us. I can't help but think that I can't help but think of the people who think it's their right to walk around unencumbered by a mask and infect people because they can't be bothered to take any personal responsibility for others in their communities. I think that's got to be part of it, is this breakdown of caring about one another and our communities and our neighbors. I can't help but think about those people and the people who are insisting on their right to hurt people, with guns, kill people with guns. So, like, again, the minority of people with these views are the ones who are holding us all hostage. Thank you, Melanie.
So to go different, I mean, the same direction, but a little different. I don't believe that we should take guns away from people. And this might sound strange coming from my personality. I just believe that the hands that they get into need to be mentally healthy, universally background checked across the country. Not like I can go from Illinois to, like, Indiana, and I can easily get a gun in one state and I can't get it in the other. And I can just cross the line because, our borders are open in all these states.
Right. It's like COVID, right? Like COVID.
Like COVID crosses it very easily. So I mean, I believe that. And I mean, I don't believe that we need to turn weapons into, adding those things to them that are illegal, like in Buffalo,
Right.
where he took his illegal, uh, what's it called, AK-40, whatever it is, for an automatic weapon, and he put the thing on it, or he made it an automatic weapon by putting that thing on it. I don't know about it, but
I
that
do want to
that should not
say,
happen.
I just want to say one little aside is, Governor Abbott talking about mental illness, the height of hypocrisy in Texas, when they are the lowest in this country in terms of providing access to mental health professionals. So how dare him? How dare them continue to pass the buck, continue to not look inside, continue to vote the way they vote? How dare them? I can't even, anyway.
You think that if you think something like this, I didn't look up the voting history of that community in Texas, right? Do we think that the history of that community, if someone can do that really quick, that'd be amazing. To see like how they typically voted, if they all voted Republican, and they, did they, do you think they do it again? Based on this, it's a very small town. Everyone knows one another. So if the town typically votes, like, did they vote Trump in 2020 or did they go Biden? Because Texas is turning a little. It's got a little bit of purple. It's purple in all the metropolitan areas, the big cities. But I was like, here in North Carolina, outside of those cities, those areas, the educated areas, it's more Republican. So I'm kind of wondering if, because again, the people are more brown than white, and voting Republican is completely against their best interests. But did they?
I think the thing with guns in Texas, it doesn't matter what your party is. You will not win as a candidate if you are squeamish about guns. So it is really less of a Republican Democrat thing because it's just so entrenched there. Unless you're in a little pocket, and even then,
Well, I know someone who lives in Texas, and he said it's actually become way more liberal. It's not, living there doesn't feel like you're living in the Old West, and that amazed me. Like, like it's actually very vegan as well in Texas. They have some of the biggest vegan festivals in the country, which is a complete oxymoron to the overall state. But I live in a state right now that is purple, that votes Democratic on some people, like our governor, and votes Republican on our senator. That's why we have Tillis, but we have a Democratic governor. So people literally go into the voting booth, pick one as a Democrat, and they pick somebody else as a Republican as they go down. They don't do party line.
Right.
So I don't understand that, but that happens, and that leads to all this. It leads to the lack of education. It leads to laws being made to make you have lack of education, burning books. It leads to lack of health care because they take it away. We know Texas is that state. But let's just not ignore Buffalo. We can't ignore Buffalo. We can't ignore what happened up there. We can't ignore that an 18-year-old went into a grocery store, targeted a grocery store of an African-American community, and intentionally went and killed them.
Mm-hmm.
I get the children, it's horrible, but a lot of people in this country have skin that's dark, and they were already scared.
Right. Rightfully so.
You got teachers scared, you got kids scared, you've got people of color scared, you've got women scared. And that's the point.
That's
the point.
That's what drives gun ownership, honestly.
But that's what drives the control. Because when you have a scared population, you're more easily manipulated.
And you're
more easily controlled.
You're more likely to buy guns too. Sorry,
But
it is true. It's
yeah, I know, but
but
we have to go further than that, Marla. We have to go further than that. We have to go deeper than they just bought guns.
No,
Why
I,
are they
I,
buying
I
guns?
agree with you. That's why I don't think the conversation should be about should we take away the guns. Like nobody's proposing that. What we need to get at is the basis, the seed, the root of what this is that makes this country so inclined toward violence. What is this death cult in this country? So the gun is just an expression of it. You know, I mean, the fact that we have easy access to it doesn't make it any, you know, easier. But the fact is, there is this seedling within. There's some sort of rotten seed of violence within this country. So now, sorry.
The rotten seed of violence within the country. As a person of color, it's been 500 plus years here. And the very fact that I think in touching upon Buffalo, the very fact that I caught the Twitch video and I heard the race theory. I heard Tucker Carlson. You can hear him. Like, you can hear him playing while he goes in, before he goes in. And while some people would say that, you know, there's always that moment of being desensitized or numb to seeing something like this, especially because it's literally a day-to-day thing that we experience as BIPOC. However, given the fact that there is a vessel that continues to perpetuate this and it's not been taken down, and the reason why they won't remove this person is because that's their bread and butter, knowing fully well that this has stoked this, it's going to continue. It began with Kyle Rittenhouse. As soon as he got off, it was like, oh, you know, this is going to be cake. To come and find out that this young man is only going to be charged with 1 count of murder out of 10 lives that he took. Then to have it follow up to the other one where the Asian American population had to go ahead now and suffer because they also had a mass shooting that followed days later. And then this hit. And I am the Columbine generation. I mean, we had drills and everything when I was in high school. I'm class of 99. And it hit all of us like a brick. And it was scary to see. I mean, yeah, when you're in school, you have the tornado drills, you've got like bomb drills, you know, we did that and didn't think anything, but to do like the active shooter drills was very traumatizing for all of us. And then Sandy Hook had a big impact. And I was just like, you would think that young children, little kids, would click in people. It's not about the money. These are lives. These are lives. But no, nothing. Thoughts and prayers. I'm tired. This that occurred, I have not stopped crying since yesterday. Since it broke. Because there have been people on TikTok who were there to hear these guttural screams and cries from these mothers. And then, I don't know who else will know, but when Columbine shooting happened, yes, honey, I'm okay. That's my little one right now. The POD released a song called Youth of a Nation. And in that music video, I believe there were kids that were holding up pictures of family and friends that they have, or kids that they had lost to school shootings, sisters, cousins, whatnot. And on the wall was written names of students and kids that were taken. So someone on TikTok did a video and played that song and played it with all the younger kids that lost their lives. And I have an 8 and 9-year-old child. And I just lost it. Because it's one thing to say our hearts are with these parents. And my children are homeschooled, and I will continue to homeschool them. But we have to do more than just have our hearts break for them. We have to do whatever we can to take action. And we have to vote. We have to get these people out who don't care. Because you can't say you are pro-life
Right.
These kids mattered for lives that are not here yet. These babies' lives matter. They mattered. And there are parents now that are going to be planning, instead of planning birthday parties, they're planning burials. And this is not fair. I'm sorry.
No.
I'm sorry. I'm going to
No.
say this. Come here. Come here.
Did you?
It's okay. This is my 8-year-old. This is Ikenna. And my 9-year-old is in his room. And just to picture their faces if something were to happen.
Yeah.
It's just enough is enough.
Sure.
And you can't just say enough is enough. Yes, we have to march. No one is saying to take guns away.
No.
You know, it's
Exactly.
regulations. Regulations. There should be no child that is allowed to walk in there and buy a gun. It's harder to vote. There's so much to do. Getting a driver's license is so excruciating. They'll run you down the.
Yeah, exactly.
Put 2 and 2 together.
Yeah.
It's because the next thing you know now, it's like, okay, when's the next one?
Right. Exactly.
And then it's probably going to be what? It'll be younger children younger than from 2nd grade to 4th grade. Teachers are losing their lives. You have to now go ahead and they have to do active shooter drills instead of the priorities.
Exactly.
Kelly.
I mean, they would rather, regulate our uteruses and the, embryos, fetuses, whatever. Once you're out here, though, anything goes. And
exactly.
I absolutely empathize with everything you said. My son was in elementary school when Sandy Hook happened, and all I wanted to do was grab him from school. It's so unfair. It is. I feel so profoundly guilty as a parent to have brought a child into this world that is so fucking violent and awful and unfair. So there's that. Kelly, it seems like you have something to say. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but
I want to hear from Kelly because you're in Canada. I mean, what do they say about us? I mean, what's it like there? I mean, there's no place else in the world that's like this country that we're living in, and the stuff that's going on. There are countries that are religious-based countries that will have less strict abortion laws than this one very soon. So you're our neighbor. You're like our neighbor that we normally were like aligned with on everything, but you don't want to be aligned with us.
No, I mean, we think that we have a gun problem here, but although we have a tenth of the population as you, our gun violence is like a fraction. Like I think there was like 200, maybe 300 deaths of gun violence death, last year, right? You guys average like 20-something thousand a year, right? So like, I feel Nanasan and Marla, I know you're both parents, like my children are out of school, but I can't imagine my children going to school and needing to learn how to deal with like a class shooter. Like that just is so rare here. Now, granted, when it does happen, it tends to be not even shooting. It's just like there's someone on the premise with a gun. They don't end up shooting. It's just teenagers that are fighting, and then one of them produces a gun. Like that is so rare. And when it does happen, it has happened in Toronto, which is where I am. It's the most populated city, right? But it's still very rare. And so, just the idea of kids needing to have to, like, I was reading about like, some tweets from parents talking about like what their children learn in these drills. And it was like, I was telling it to my son and my husband today. I'm just like we can't comprehend that. Like children needing to learn how to like even sacrifice their bodies for the rest of the students, by like throwing things. Like it's just we can't comprehend it. So I don't want to just dismiss like our gun laws, I mean, I'm not familiar with our gun laws. I know we just passed a stronger gun law that I think has to do with like grandfathering guns. So like you know, if you're selling a gun, there has to be the whole background check and this and that. Like I grew up in a household with a hunter. My dad was a hunter, and I never saw his gun ever. It was locked away. He would not tell us where it was or where a key was. Like he was very, very responsible about that and making sure that we understand gun is not a toy, right? You know,
so I think that used to be more the culture here too. Like children who grew up in rural communities, that was the norm. It's like there may be a gun in the house, but it's not bandied about or accessible, you know. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting because, you know, this whole idea of the great replacement theory.
The title. Why are you shaking?
What's up?
The mouse on mute.
Okay. That is a rebranding really of what historically Jews have also been living under, which is this idea that Jews are here to steal your jobs. Jews are here to make all the money and give none back. The Jews are, you know, they're the devil. That, you know, Jews will marry your good Christian people and, you know, ruin your bloodlines. So this is, honestly, I don't mean to diminish the Great Replacement theory, but it is a historic, there is a basis of it far beyond the original book that goes way back. But I guess the point is like, we really need to think about what, you know, when people came to this country and quote unquote settled it, the colony, is that the seed of the violence in this country? You know, no.
Something I would definitely say yes to you, Marla, in regards to the seed. Yes, it's a catalyst. And Kelly, I do have friends that are in, I have friends and family in London. I have friends in Canada. I'm from Nigeria, so even I've had my friends say, what the fuck? But we're the uncivilized country. Oh yeah, now. We don't know what we're doing. We are not perfect. The violence that is done there, unfortunately, is done by corrupt, you know, military and things like that. But we don't have, you know, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
And it just, to go back to like priorities and just sum it up, and like, you know, my friend in Australia is like, what is happening? They're like, I don't get this, because if there's a shooting that happens, immediately there's a call for reform. And it's the last time that there's a mass shooting. I know that happened in Scotland and happened somewhere else where it was like, yeah. And so something that stood out that was extremely disturbing during Abbott's press conference, he said, and this is where you go, what really matters? You can tell there's not lives, because he said the Democrats are not to use this as a pawn for, you know, political, because let's not get this twisted. This is not as bad as teaching critical race theory.
He said that?
Yes. Critical race theory is worse than what just happened, and also made the comment that this could have been way worse. I'm sorry. 20 children and 3 teachers.
And critical race theory is not, it's the boogeyman. It's not taught. I mean, like, I wish that it were, but it's not taught in public school, elementary.
It's not.
You know, so
they don't want to teach it. They don't want to teach it because somebody said something very true. Pictures in the 50s and 60s were done in black and white on purpose to make it seem like it was so far away. I had a friend that is a history teacher, and she said the reason why they don't want critical race theory to be taught is because those pictures put them in color. That's someone's aunt, grandfather, grandmother, great-great-grandfather that they can trace and look at
Right.
that picture. They don't want to be
Mhm.
caught. They want to keep it that was so far away.
Right.
There's diversity here.
Mhm.
I don't understand, even getting back to the trying to control the autonomy of women's bodies. So one state passed it where it's 15 weeks, another state passed it where it's conception.
Yeah. It's
Where
because everything comes down to states' rights here, and that's a huge mess. I wish there were some way out of that, but that's like from Jim Crow on down. That's it's up to the states. It's up to the states. It's up to the states.
Until the federal government does something about it. Don't move to Oklahoma.
No.
Kimberly.
So
Don't
that
move
got me
there.
with the states' rights thing. It got me thinking, didn't Biden just sign some law today supposed to be like I don't know if it was supposed to be like honoring George Floyd and changing the way that police interact, but it's
Right.
not the police who murdered George Floyd. It's federal agents. So this law that he signed changes how federal agents interact, and it is hopeful that local police will follow that plan. But he doesn't have the ability to make the local police make those changes when they're the ones who we're seeing do this.
Yeah. There's nothing that seems like that can be done. There's more and more, I mean, mental health also comes back into play. The very fact that one of the things that I advocate for is mental health. I don't like the stigma, and especially in communities of color, there's a stigma with mental health. It can never get better if you don't address it. So I'm a huge proponent. I suffer from anxiety since I was 12. I suffer from depression. There's not one person right now who, if you weren't suffering from depression or some form, you are now, because look at the climate of what is going on. So, but I was like, I watched the video cam footage of a older woman of color who's a grandmother who was having a mental health crisis, and they shot her. A young man who is an African-American young man who is a gifted pianist was tased. The parents called because the family called because he was having a mental health crisis. So he had a breakdown. They tased the young man and they shot him 3 times. It all comes down to, and then kind of touching base about, he passed it at the federal, but these states will hire cops that were let go due to violence, misconduct, and they'll hire them again. They just got rid of a cop who stomped the head of a black man in front of the rest of the cops. When the cousin came out and asked the cop for his card, he said, "We don't have any cards." The other cop, who's black, looked at him in the face, it was caught on camera, and said, "Come here, I have a card, we carry cards." Wrote down his information, all of it, since apparently he didn't have a card. There was a white female cop who was just flabbergasted by his response. She pulled out her card and gave it to the... So he was fired because it came to find out that he had a record of violence and a very troubled background when it came to people of color and racist background. And you have to look at, with all the reforms that happen at the federal, going back to with Roe v. Wade, where the Biden administration is just pretty much bracing for violence.
Will there be violence?
Yes.
We don't storm the castle.
Well, not necessarily from us. I mean, but the point is,
us.
they're not going to be happy until we're living under something that's much closer to Gilead. So
yes.
It's just we can call it what we want to. It's like they're gonna that's not the end game is not overturning Roe v. Wade.
Oh no, Kelly, is Canada ready? Is it ready for the influx?
Oh, I wish we could go there. They don't want our asses.
They don't, but how do you turn away the people that are sane? Because that's who's going to go.
Mhm.
Those are the people you want in your country.
I
And
wish
then
it was.
you leave the rest, you leave the rest of them behind, and you hope to get the ones that get stuck out. I mean, we talk about that. I mean, if you haven't watched The Handmaid's Tale, you should. It's worth paying the money to Hulu to do it. It's incredibly disturbing, but
Who needs dystopia when we have reality? Who needs?
well, that's the thing is you kind of go, did they watch that and then sit down and say,
It
hey,
was
you
not
know what?
supposed to
This
be
is a really good
construction
idea.
manual. Yeah.
I
It was supposed to be a cautionary tale, not an instruction manual.
I just thought of something. Thanks, ADH brain. Autism is fantastic. Okay, so going back to what Marla said, she was like, "Why do we need to read where you can actually look at what's happening?" Okay, I'm a Marvel fan, so I have Disney Plus, and Marvel has a show called What If, and that just triggered something in my head where it was the What If Zombies episode, and one of the characters said something about, Spider-Man was like, don't you guys have, in regards to like the just craziness with everybody being a zombie and what was going on, and he goes, don't you guys have television? Okoye is like, in Wakanda? And she's like, we don't need it. We see what you guys have. We just look at what's going on in America. It's like,
Yeah, I don't need
it's true.
dystopia, you know?
You don't need it. And you kind of look at it like, okay, so, and then the other thing too is that, like, I took film studies when I was in college, and people were like, because I would really pick apart films because, yeah, you can write a script. It could be fiction. You'll know fiction. But then if you really look at it, you're like, okay, there's more to this. And a lot of more movies are channeling, especially ones dealing with like climate change, things like that, or films that are dealing with things like women's rights, autonomy, misogyny, like things that are going on right now, rights being lost, what's going on with people of color, what's going on with LGBTQ community, what's going on, and people are just like, oh, it's just a film. I'm like, no, this is possible future that's being shown to you. You can take it as just you paid your ticket, your outrageous $20 ticket to go see it, and just think, oh, it was a great movie. Or you can look at it and say, okay, this is leading to something. Things like the movie, like what is the climate change movie? Something After Tomorrow?
Leonardo DiCaprio one.
That one. There was another one that was like Something After Tomorrow, where
Day After Tomorrow.
There we go. So I remember watching with a friend. They were just because I was like, I refuse. Things like that trigger me because I'm like, this is where we're heading, and look what's happening.
I see no joy in watching those movies. I see no insight in because that is reality. That is just that is how people will react. That is how, you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's exactly how they'll react. You movies that are based on certain things, when you want to talk about like what is the correlation between in terms of the history, is this like the stem, the seed? Are we seeing violence that's gone back before? I remember going to go see Amistad, and the amount of white people that walked out. I said, no, you need to see this. I'm looking around, and they are, for me, as a person of color, and I will say this because a lot of times you'll hear people, our people say, I'm tired of seeing us suffering. I'm tired of seeing movies that involve us suffering. Yes and no. I agree. However, as an African, and there being sometimes a disconnect between African Americans and Africans, who African Americans don't see themselves as one of us, but there's such a disconnect, and that's on purpose. I mean, we were pulled from home. They don't, they got to connect. And so they'll say, well, they don't get it and they don't understand. I'm like, you need to see this because it's not in the books. You're not going to find this in the books for a reason. Rosewood, I had no idea about the events of Rosewood. And I went, and some people walked out, and we sat there. The most striking thing I'll remember is at the end of the movie, they were showing like the history, what was going on, what had happened afterwards. But then when they took the black and opened back up and it was just empty land, that is actually Rosewood. There was nothing built on it. It was just empty. And I went to school And I love everybody. I don't look at you for the color of your skin. I look at you for the content of your character. We will respect one another, but you have to understand I'm very strong in my views. If you are anti-Black, anti-POC, anti-LGBTQ, anti-environment, we can't be no, you can't smile in my face. And people, I learned my lesson once we had the election between Trump and that past one. And I had a friend who went to go see the movie because I was predominantly white high school, and I was just livid when I went in. And it was because of the images that stuck out. They didn't do anything to me. They were just as confused, and they kind of backed away for the rest of the day, but I was just triggered. And she went to go see it. She came back the next day, was going off on her white friends, and I was just like, all right, well, I don't know what happened. But then she came up to me and bawled, and she said, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. They don't teach us this. I'm so sorry. And I said, you don't apologize. You didn't do anything.
Right.
It's not you. But the fact that you acknowledged that pain,
Right.
and you kind of saw it visually, that means everything to me, because we can have allies that are not really allies. Because if you're an ally, you're going to want to watch the hard stuff that your ancestors did, because it's still in some manner or form is rooted in your benefit to this day. So you have to see what the disparities are. She was just like, I'm so sorry. And I told her, I said, this is, don't, now that you understand it, you can make changes.
Yeah.
You have privilege just solely by the color of your, use that. Make a difference.
Right.
Make a difference. And I think one of the things I will say for Texas is going to go blue. If it wasn't for what they're seeing with the shooting for kids and things that are going on right now with the mass shootings and the uptick, there's white supremacists are getting bold here in Atlanta. They're just like leaving bags with rocks, and we are still here. I'm like, you guys do know that there are Gen Zers raised by millennials who won't put any. I will blare emo music and we will just go. That's our call. Anything from the Gen Xers, we've got our call. And we won't know. I mean, I'm so proud of Gen Zers. They are bold. They are like, yes. And my little ones, they're just alphas, but they know too. And I'm like, you keep going here.
In this world, like, how is this acceptable? How is this sane? How is this okay? So Kimberly, did you have something to say?
I did. I just wanted to recommend a book. So if anyone, a book that I read, I think back in 2020. So what Naus was just talking about, it, if you're interested in more history and really learning about where so much of this violence comes from, I found the book Stamped from the Beginning by Ibram X. Kendi to be so horrifying and eye-opening. And I've been aware, for a long time of the amount of privilege that I have coming from where I'm from as a white woman. But it's become more clear. And so I'm so determined to learn and really understand where I can make a change and how I can help people understand that we are in a position to work to make things better. And this book, I think, is a really good place to start. It's long and it's heavy, but it's important, and it's stuff that we are not taught in school. It's stuff that kids are not learning now, but it's the truth. And
did you say it's called?
So I just wanted to recommend that.
Stamped from the Beginning. Stamped. Like
yes. Yeah. I'll put it in the comments so all of the viewers from all the different spots can see.
I'm gonna show you guys something. So shout out to my friend, but this shirt here, which he did like the Ramones, so it says vegan, and then of course it says this is my friend of the Vegan Vampire. He has a clothing line and shows more of us that are within the scene that's that exist, and compassion for the animals, for people, for the planet. It all comes full circle. That's why you can't. And if you if you're a vegan for whatever your reason is, be it all encompassing or for one reason, that's a start. But you
Right.
cannot be a vegan and look at what's happening
Right.
and not say, this matters too.
Right.
It's time for vegans and intersectional vegans to stop the bullshit and realize that you cannot do one without the other. You can't. Because just like animals are sentient beings, these children are sentient beings, people who are being murdered. Their feelings matter. Their injustices matter. Any cruelty to any living thing matters. In my spirituality, I am a Chiist. So my spirituality is before the slave trade. So before visitors came unwanted that knocked on the door, what we were still practicing, which is every single thing has a life, from the tiniest little being to the plants. You must respect that. You must respect it. Because if you don't, it's going to show you, that's what's happening right now. We're not respecting the planet. I am terrified. The next generation here, little kids are Generation Alpha. And you kind of feel like you're fighting and you're fighting and you're fighting and you're fighting for them, for just existence. You're fighting for them to make sure that the future is best for them. But look who is holding the book. Look who's writing the chapters.
Yeah.
Until they are gone and out, we are stuck.
Yeah.
There's no page. The page is trying to move to a new beginning, a new chapter. A promise. They're like, nope.
Right.
Greed. Just it's
Control.
it's control.
Right.
But I think we're more. Voting is important. Voting is very important. I'm so looking forward to seeing Stacey Abrams take it for Georgia.
So we hope so. Suddenly Georgia will be the state to move to.
Yeah, because
she might do it this time.
I think so.
If Warnock can hold on against a football player who's got scandals backed by Trump, if Warnock can hold on and they can change that state to a blue governor, that'll change Georgia. It'll change Georgia for a very long time. And the last election proved that Georgia's ready to make that flip. Yes. And unlike North Carolina, and certainly not South Carolina, and Virginia is going backwards. So with their new governor, so you just kind of any state can flip. When I moved here, North Carolina had an awful governor who just lost his Senate bid. So
oh no,
yeah, it was too bad. Yeah, too bad. So against another probably horrible Republican. But
sorry.
Go ahead, Marla.
I was just going to say a few things. One is that we need to get these guys out of offices ASAP. And, obviously we've been saying this for years, but we really, really need to, because we need to get these younger, progressive, compassionate people in office ASAP so they can turn this horrid ship around. So, yeah, I agree, vote. I would also say that all of these states that are currently red are doing everything they can to disenfranchise voters and to redistrict and to make it harder and harder and harder and harder for Black and brown votes to count. So we need to commit to getting as many people out and engaged as possible. The other thing I was going to just really quickly say is the point of the takeaway, I think that so many people are so defensive and bizarre about critical race theory, just absolutely cannot sanely engage on the topic, is for whatever reason, the point is just we don't want you to feel bad. We want you to own, to see, to notice, and to create change, to try to make a more equal world, to make a more level playing field. So it's not like that we want people to say, oh, I'm so sorry. It's the point is that's not the end game. The end game is to turn this around. The other thing I was just going to say really fast is with Vegan Street, we do try to tie together the pieces and present a unified anti-oppression worldview. So like we are going to be consistent as much as we can against racism, against sexism, against all of these horrible things. And so yesterday when the news broke about this latest, mass shooting, school killing, I was like, you know what? We need to include children in this big picture of nonviolence and advocacy against oppression and violence. So we did, write something about it, connecting the dots as much as we can. But the point is, I guess, we just all need to do better, and we need to hold everyone accountable, and these people are showing their true colors with their defensive bizarreness around critical race theory. And they're like veiled threats that it's going to get worse. You guys keep making us feel bad.
That type of thinking is what has just kept the wheel going, because it's not for you, again, just like you said, for you to feel bad. But
Right.
if you don't take accountability, you're never going to see a change. You can't go and protest in March and say, I'm Black Lives Matter. Okay, here's what we need to teach so
Right.
that we keep this type of energy and the fact that you're understanding about marginalized groups. Let us keep working with it, but you can't be like, well, it was so long ago, or I don't really feel comfortable. You don't feel comfortable.
Right.
We don't feel comfortable walking out the front door.
Right.
It's time to be in our shoes. You need to be uncomfortable. You
Right.
need to feel uncomfortable. I say the same thing when it comes to people of color with realizing that there's such a fear of your culture.
Mm.
Don't be scared. You have to understand that they came and studied with us, took so much from indigenous cultures, spun it around, made it their own, and ran with it. Very thing to control you with. And you have to know I will say the greatest thing I've ever seen is that Gen Xers, or those that were raised in a certain type of where it's an indoctrination, they're breaking away and they're like, wait a minute. And they're reading. The younger generation is like, nope, I've never seen so many open spirit. I'm like, my babies, I'm so proud of you, because they're coming into their own.
Right.
They have, rebellious parents, like in terms of millennials, these little ones here, they're learning anything and everything. I'm, teaching them to, number one, you respect a woman and you will defend her.
Right.
If someone comes, and even though that our youngest one is 8 and he's the sweetest thing with the biggest cheeks, but he's got a throwing arm and he's protective. So he's protective of his brother. And if I had a girl, so it would be a done deal for whoever, and they're just 8 and 9. But you have to have and protect them. Yeah, we can handle our own. Trust. And you also have to look at it. You want them to know, because they're going to be the ones to take the baton.
Right.
And it's in anything that we're doing, in anything. I mean, the children are involved. You cannot do this and say, oh, we can't involve them, because we're leaving this to them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's our responsibility to set
Yes.
that foundation for them, and we're doing a really piss poor job of it.
Right.
So
Yes.
we have
But
we have to do better. We have to. People don't understand voting isn't just like for president. Voting is your county officials.
Thank
It
you.
starts at
You know
that
who
level.
does understand that? The Republicans.
They do.
Exactly.
They do. And you have to vote, because your school board matters. You might not be like, oh, that doesn't matter, but it does, because if
The
you don't want
Republicans
things to
know that.
impact you personally in your own home, in your own town, in your own county, Well, you need to vote for the people in those areas that are going to align with what you want to see happen. Obviously, it never will be 100%, but you want them to align enough that you don't have to worry about boys and girls being separated in school, not just by color, but by sex.
Or,
I mean, go ahead.
just like you said, I'm so sorry, starting from the bottom and working your way up. Crown Act was passed. I seriously think that is very unnecessary, but the Crown Act was passed that protects people of color from discrimination against wearing traditional hairstyles such as braids, protective styling, coils, locks, because they're not
what you
dreadlocks.
look like, because
Exactly.
what your natural hairstyle, your natural hair texture is.
That is it. They think it's just a style for like, oh, it's in fashion. No. This dates back. Dates back. The styles that are hip or that you see like friggin' Kim Kardashian wearing cornrows. I don't give a care if her children are mixed. You don't sport that child. No. Because it's not just a matter of it's a pretty hairstyle. For us as slaves, we put food, rice, things like that. They were also paths and maps for us to get around. So where you see it as a hairstyle, it is way more than that. And it needs to be respected. But there are school board people and principals who are cutting Black children's hair, who are telling them that they are expelled, who are not letting them graduate, who are saying for people who are LGBTQ and doing this to teachers, you can't wear this graphic shirt because the flag is on there. Because
you can wear a Confederate flag shirt, you can't wear a Black Lives Matter shirt.
You can't wear Black Lives Matter. You can't do Pride. You can't say trans kids, protect trans children.
Right.
But this is. Oh my God, the colors. We can't let them see the rainbow. What the, Skittles shows it on every day. Don't taste it, let them see it and what it really represents.
They're the
it's ridiculous.
They're the dinosaurs and they know it. And that's where the fear comes from. And that's where the control comes from. And the one little thing I want to say, I know we're getting close to our end, is I am a proud member of Gen X, but that when I was coming of age in the 80s, it's so funny because we think of earlier generations as being so stodgy, but, men were wearing makeup. It was called like gender bending and it was cool. And it's like, you wanted a boyfriend who wore eyeliner.
Oh, yeah.
But the point is just that this may sound a little cutesy or whatever, but the boomers raised the Gen X, and the boomers were a little more, they were the hippie generation. They were more progressive than their parents. Gen X is more progressive than their parents. Gen Z is more progressive. You know what I mean? It just goes on and on and on. And like as much as we would love progress to be faster, and we really need it to be faster, I think a lot of what we're seeing is just the ugly lashings of a dinosaur that knows that it's way, like, not even ageism, not even like, I don't really like so much like it when they talk about the old white men, because I don't think it's the mentality. It's not the age, it's the mentality of entitlement. It's the mentality of bigotry. So what we are experiencing is the thrashings, and it's going to be violent and ugly, but we're going to get to the other side of it, I believe. So,
well, I hope we do. But I mean, what scares me is a place like Long Island, where I grew up, which New York is a liberal state. Long Island out in Suffolk County was more conservative, more Republican, but the island has turned. It's changed. The generation that's my generation who's raising their kids now are voting Republican. You know what that generation is? It's a generation of immigrants, first-born immigrants in this country, from people from Italy and Ireland and Europe. And they're voting Republican, which is completely against the self-interest of everything that you just said, Marla. It's not the stodgy old people. They have impacted a group of wealthy people on Long Island who hate Black people, are racist, don't like Black Lives Matter, and are complete opposite of their parents. Like these are people I grew up with that are there now still. It is horrifying. I have friends that live there are horrified at the school board meetings. And this is a state I never thought I'd see go red. Wait 2 years.
I don't.
New
think
York,
so.
New York's leaning towards purple, and Long Island has 8.5 million people on it.
Long Island can stay over there.
It is.
They can't sit with us.
They can't sit with us. It is just absurd. It's absurd to see this stuff, but to see it from people our age.
It's scary.
People who are literally. Stephen is first generation. His mom came off the boat from Italy. He's first generation. First generation kids are voting against their own self-interest in a place where their education is amazing. More money is spent on education.
They
there
don't
than
view it
most
as their
states.
self-interest, though.
It's just I can't even tell you what it is. It's just so frustrating. And just to bring it all back, let's bring it all back to what's going on. Education, money, power, greed. Really not giving a shit about anyone but white people.
That's what it is.
White men, sorry, because it's not women. The women may think that they have it until the men get their way. And then the women are just going to be like Gilead, cutting your finger off if you read, So
women aren't to play. No.
You know?
I'm gonna say that it is white men and in some way white women. Not all. It's also black women. Look, anybody, because I scratch my head so many times when I see any person of color who's Republican. I'm like, really? Like, I don't understand. Where do you think that they're going to look at you and be like, oh, you're just extremely, extremely tan? They don't care.
You're the exception.
Thank you.
I mean not you. I mean them.
Them.
You're the exception that they're not going to do anything to you.
Oh, they think that, and I'm like, you're missing that. It's like they're missing that thing. But with where it comes to Roe v. Wade, and I watched a very disturbing TikTok when I found out I was pregnant with Amoha. I found out because my stomach was hurting, and I figured maybe it was just gas. So I was like, okay, ginger beer, ginger chews, maybe that will help. I don't know what's going on. And I was like, okay, then if it's not improving, I'm going to go ahead and go to the ER. I'm like, I don't want to just take a chance. This is not feeling right. And it got sharper and sharper. We go there, and they went ahead to take me back for an ultrasound. And the nurse was ecstatic to run into the room after a while to tell me, guess what? Oh, I'm so excited for you guys. And we're like, what? And she's like, you're pregnant. I'm like, shut up. At that time, my ex was like, don't do that to her. Because we were trying. And he was like, don't do that to her. At that point in time, my pronouns were she, her, and they.
Yeah.
But he was like, don't do that to her, please. Because don't do that to me either, because we're waiting. And I was ecstatic. So she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. No, that's true. And then the doctor comes in, a different doctor, and states that yeah, so you're pregnant and it might look like it may be ectopic. Walk straight out. I'm sitting there like, so then she doesn't come back. Another nurse comes in, and he's like, so yeah, this is what ectopic means, that the baby could be against the wall, and then it's a possibility that not only could you lose the baby, you can lose your life as well because of where it is. And then I kid you not, as I'm trying to process this, he says, so where are you going to deliver the baby? My ex is 6'5". I was like, for anybody who's in the hospital, prepare to see Hulk smash, because he was like, how dare you ask that question? Where it's a possibility that I could lose both of them.
Right.
The reason why it was triggering, and luckily, that Amo has a healthy, close to 5'5", eats like a football team, vegan, super tall and healthy, and thinks he runs the house, and I wouldn't have it any other way. But it was very disturbing to see a video of where someone was asking a woman, so you're looking at the older generation, about abortion rights. and what she thinks. And she said immediately, well, no, I think, every baby matters, and, God this and God that. And then he said, well, what about ectopic pregnancies, which are a high risk to the mother and to
Yeah.
the baby? She opened up her mouth and said, God has a plan. They matter too. Everything will work out. If it's divine that the mother passes, then I said, oh my God. And these are the people who vote. We are in trouble.
These are the people. That's you're
Evangelicals.
100% right. You can't. Yeah, you can't. I'm sorry, you can't vote based on God because it's this magical mystery thing in the sky. And I'm coming at this as someone who believed in God up until like the last year. Yeah, I believe in science. Your body is saying, no, this baby is not going to work. So science makes it so that they can remove that baby so you don't die. Because that baby can't grow etopically. It can't grow in a tube.
Not a baby, it's a fetus. Sorry.
Exactly.
Well, the baby can't grow.
Right.
It
can't.
That it's impossible. It can't. Babies can't grow in a tube.
Can we just repeat? Can I just? I know we have to go soon, but can I just say it's a fetus? I think it's really important that we don't use the term baby before birth. I mean, it's just we need to be really consistent about that because that's what the forced birthers want us to do.
It is a fetus. It
is a fetus, but when that baby becomes 7 months old, 8 months old, that baby can be born and be a living baby, in the womb. So yes, at fetus time, as what I mean is that as the baby grows, it can't grow. The fetus can't grow in a tube.
Right.
It's impossible because babies become 6 pounds inside your body because the tube can't handle that. And I don't think the other problem is that people don't even understand the science. And I'm not a science person, but I understand the science enough about my own body. Men need to understand the science about women's bodies, to understand how they give birth to babies, how milk is produced, how and then the women like me that are postmenopausal who can't have a baby anymore still has to give a shit about women who can, because it doesn't impact me anymore, so it doesn't matter, is probably a big piece of people who are where I'm at. And it's really easy to want to think like that because it's easier. Well, it's way easier.
They had a hearing where they were asking, there were 3 OBGYN, and they were asking them about abortion. These are guys, men,
Yep.
One asked, the baby is coming out, crowning, the woman is giving birth. Would you abort that baby? The look of the faces in the back of the people, I was like, that's a birth. What are you?
Yeah, the woman's going to say, the woman decided right there, you know what? I don't want to do this. Just kill it.
Yeah.
Like any woman would do that. After carrying that baby for 9+ months, as the baby's coming out of your body, which hurts like hell. I don't have to go through it to know that it's incredibly painful. You just say, you know what? Just chop it off.
Yeah.
I just don't want this now. And a lot of women when they give birth don't know what to do. So some of them are actually giving birth to a baby that they don't actually want. They don't want to take care of, and they're forced into that situation because of circumstance. And some learn to love and some don't. There's a lot of people who abuse children out there.
Yes. And not everybody should be a parent. That's the other thing that makes me extremely, extremely angry. You're so worried about a clump of cells that are not even formed instead of the vessel that is carrying and creating this life that could have mental health issues, that can be going through drug addiction, that could be going through financial labor, because stress can do damage. You have to, the very fact that you don't care, you don't know what health conditions that they're going through. Yeah, that's my 9-year-old. You don't know. Yes. Yeah, no show this time.
It's not just the woman though. It's the man too. The man's part of that fetus as well. Those genes, the drugs, the mental health, the lack of mental health, everything's in that little fetus that can come out and be, and then, I mean, in my practicum, my internship for school counseling, I swear there was a kid that was going to be that school shooter based on his personality. You're like, he might be that one. So if I hear about it, I'm gonna, I'll remember.
Yeah.
But because the picked on odd, in the counseling office, often like really odd, child. And there's nothing wrong with being odd.
No, I'm odd.
But
Nothing wrong with that.
Right. It goes to a point where you go, when the kids are so mean,
yeah,
and the teachers are so mean, and there's nobody there to back that kid up because they're odd and off. That's the bullying. I don't know what was wrong with the 18-year-old. The 18-year-old is a white supremacist in Buffalo, and
yeah.
I don't know what's wrong with this kid, this high schooler in Texas. I know in California there was a disgruntled man, and they took him down in the Asian church, and the shooting up in Dallas of the Asian women, and that's something that happened in Georgia too, in Atlanta too. I don't know what the thought process is, but I do know that we are doing a really piss poor job of letting people know that everyone you're not better than me. I'm not better than you. Skin color matters because it matters in this world, but in reality, it shouldn't. We should be able to live and get along and love and care for one another. It doesn't mean we all like each other, because we don't all just like dogs. Some dogs like one another and some dogs don't. Even though they're really cute, loving dogs to us, they meet other dogs and they go, I don't like you. Well, I meet people and people meet me that go, I don't like you. And that's okay, because there's millions and millions and billions of people on the planet. We don't have to be friends with one another. But you know what? I still need to respect you.
Correct. I'm not quite sure. It hasn't been revealed what triggered him.
Right.
And as someone who was bullied from first grade until junior year of high school, and I mean severely bullied, mental health advocacy in schools is poor. It's not addressed the right way. Luckily for me, I've never been the type to snap. It was just that, unfortunately, I was very sad, individual. You're trying to process what's going on. Right. And late autism diagnosis explains a lot now, which I was just late diagnosed with. And but it's difficult, because I mean, you see what goes through it. It breaks my heart when I see of kids either committing suicide because they've been ignored for being bullied, or something like this, where there's two ends. Either A, they snap, right, or B, they say, I have no other reason to be here. Mm-hmm. Both are not listened to. They're not taken seriously. And so it has it where there's continual, you do have some musicians that actually, they write like their best work is because of something maybe from a trauma. There are so many amazing artists out there, and they pour that out there, or right, poets write that. And it's horrible that is the case, and it needs to improve. Mental health in the United States is piss poor. And the other thing, like you were saying, we should all not look at skin color. We should look at the fact that, we all bleed red. However, just like you said, the mass shooting, the Asian, he was killed. The white supremacist, he was just taken. Same thing with Dylan Roof, taken. This young man, they immediately said he was gunned down. And then you look at what's going online, where they are saying that the Republican Party is using this to their advantage, or trying to, saying that he was an illegal immigrant when he was born here.
Also that he was trans, they were making that up.
Oh, yes. Paul Gosar, I'm going to call you out right now. That statement was horrific.
How he could still be in office. It's just all of them. Hey, you guys, it's 7:20. We could be going, but I'm kind of hungry.
Oh, good. I finally sneezed. All right. Well, we can obviously we can talk about this topic. It's going to be relevant for more than just this week. And sadly, it'll be relevant in other weeks as well. But we appreciate your joining us and watching us while we have this conversation, because these are conversations that we hope you're having with your friends and your loved ones. Because not just watching us have them with each other. Because I know in my house we are talking about it. I know in Marla's house is being talked about, and clearly in Now's house, Kelly's house, yep. I'm sure in Kimberly's house too, and Sangeeta's house as well. And Laura for sure, she'll be back soon. So we hope that you need to talk about this. You need to talk about it with kids. You need to talk about it with your parents. You need to talk about it with every person that you know. And you need to influence people who aren't going to vote. Primaries and full-on elections.
Local.
Because who gets local, especially because that's where you live and that impacts your everyday life. And then you have federal and state, which also impact your everyday life or can take your rights away. So these are things that you really need to have outside of just listening and watching us, because this was not an easy night for any of us on the Stew Crew to have this conversation. And we plan on having a difficult one next week too, because if you haven't noticed, we were all born women and we like having rights, and that's potentially going to be taken away. And we're not okay with that. We're also not okay with the females in the animal ag industry having their rights taken away as sentient beings. And we want to make that correlation. So that's our next week's topic, which I never get to tell you about because I never know. We can really close this out because we can just keep going.
Okay, sure. Well, thanks everyone for an engaging conversation. I'll move you all back to the green room. Bye, Helene, Marla, Kelly, and Nas. Well, I hope that you have felt seen or held or supported during this conversation, and that you've learned something maybe as well. Just keep learning, keep speaking up for yourself and each other, and I don't know, have these conversations like Helene said. It's so important that we don't just let this go by as just another blip on the radar, and that so often is how it seems to be. All right. Thank you for being here. Thanks for all the comments, for engaging with us. And we'll see you next week for another super important conversation. Thanks. Bye-bye.